Alright, so for Tuesday's homework, we're doing 13 through 21. And so I'm going to start a drawing on here. List the fractions and decimals in order from least to greatest. So smallest to largest. So for this one, we have 0.5, 3/16, 0.75, and 5/48. So what you need to do is you need to either list everything as a decimal or everything as a fraction. So for this, I think it would be easier to list everything as a fraction. So I'm going to add a blank slide, and I'm going to rewrite at the top what they gave me. Alright, so 0.5 and 0.75 are decimals that are super easy to turn into fractions. So 0.5 is the same as 1/2, and 0.75 is the same as 3/4. So now when we do these problems, we have to have an LCM, which is the least common multiple. So my new list is 1/2, 3/4, 3/16, and 5/48. So right now, I already know by looking at this, my LCM is going to be 48 because 16 fits, 4 fits, and 2 fits. So what I need to do is convert all of my fractions into fractions with denominators of 48. So 2 times 24 equals 48. So it would be 1 times 24 on the top. So I have 24/48. That's 1/2. So now if I have 3/4, 4 times 12 equals 48. So now I'm going to have 3 times 12. That's 36. So I have 24/48. Now I have 36/48. Then I have 3/16. And it's 16 times 3, I believe, but I'm going to check. 6 times 3 is 18. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Yep. 16 times 3 equals 48. So I'm going to do 3 times 3, which is 9. And then the last one I don't need to do anything to because it already has the denominator of 48. So I have 5/48, 9/48, 24/48, and 36/48. So I need to look back at my question. I'm ordering them from least to greatest. So I know the smallest is 5/48. I'm going to mark that off. Then I know it's 3/16, and then it's 0.5 and 0.75. Because my fractions, my 0.5 is the 24, and my 0.75 was the 3/4. So that's an order of least to greatest. So that's how you do number 13. So I'm not going to do every single problem, but I'm going to try to choose a few of the more difficult ones to help you with. Because you're supposed to do 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. Plus, if you watch the live lesson, I'm going to help you with different ones from this video. So that way, if you're really struggling, you get even more help. So let's look at number 15 because there's positive and negative numbers. So I have 3/4, -7/10, -3/4, and 8/10. So I'm going to add another blank slide, and I'm going to write all those down. 3/4, -7/10, -3/4, and positive 8/10. So remember, if there's no sign in front of it, it's automatically positive. So I already know my two positive numbers are going to be farther to the right. So we're going to put all of these in decimals. Even though they're already fractions, it's going to be easier to just put them all in decimals. Because if I have 3/4, we just did that one in another problem. 4 times 25 equals 100. So 3 times 25 equals 75. So when I have 75 hundredths, that's 0.75. Now, when the denominator is 10, so right here, you would put first your negative 0.7 in your 10th spot. Now, to make it a little easier, you can put a 0 behind it. So it's like having negative 70 hundredths. Okay? So then I have a negative 3/4. So it's the same thing as we did before, but it's negative 0.75. Then I have a positive 8/10, so it'd be 0.8, and I'm going to follow it with a 0. So the lowest number is going to be this negative 0.75, which is this negative 3/4. So I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to write that on the line. And then I have negative 7/10. And then I have a positive 3/4 and a positive 8/10. So these problems are not really that hard, but it is trying to figure out, do I do a decimal, do I do a fraction, and then comparing denominators. And finally, for this video, let's do number 16 together. So we have negative 3/8, 5/16, negative 65 hundredths, and 2/4. So I'm going to add a slide, and I'm going to write negative 3/8, positive 5/16, negative 0.65, and 2/4. So what I know right now, what I'm looking at is looking at some of these fractions that are going to be really difficult to turn into a decimal because their numerators don't go into 100. So what you can do is you can do long division. How many times does 8 fit into negative 3? 0 times. So then you add a decimal and a 0. How many times does 8 fit into 30? So you're going to pretend about the sign for right now. We're going to pretend there's no sign there. 8 fits into 30 3 times because 8 times 3 is 24. 30 minus 24 is 6. Does 8 fit into 6? No. So we add another 0. We bring it down. Does 8 fit into 60? Yes. I know that 6 times 8 is 48, and I know 7 times 8 is 56, and I know 8 times 8 is 64, so it has to be 7. 8 times 7 is 56, subtract 60 minus 56. It is 4. 8 does not fit into 4, but 8 does fit into 40. So I have 8 times 5 equals 40. So when you subtract, you have no remainders. You bring your decimal point straight up. So that looks really weird. 0.375. And it's negative, which would be the same thing as negative 375 over the denominator of 1,000. And then you could break it all the way down to get negative 3/8 when you simplify. But just to put it in decimal form, we have negative 375 thousandths. So then, I'm going to look at my 5/16, and I'm going to do the same thing. So 5 goes on the inside and 16. How many times does 16 fit into 5? 0. $16 fits into 50. 16 times 3 is 48. 50 minus 48 is 2. So add another 0. 16 fits into 21 time. 16 times 1 is 16. Subtract 4. 16 fits into 40 3 times, because it is, oh, nope, that's wrong. 16 fits into 40 2 times. Sixteen times 2. 2 times 6 is 12. 32. So now I have 40 minus 32, which is 8. I need to move that up. 16 fits into 80. How many times? Well, all we needed to go to was this third place value, because we have negative 0.375 there. So then here we have a 0.312, and it's positive. So then we know that our 5/16 is a little more than 3/10 or 31/100 when we solve those problems. So if we're estimating, which is something we should be pretty familiar with, when you estimate on these problems, if you have 0.312, if we estimated to the nearest hundredth, it would be about 31/100, which is 0.31, because this 2 here doesn't round that 1 up to 2. So if we looked up here and we look at this 5, this would be about negative 0.38. So now let's look. We have a negative 0.65. And then our last fraction is 2/4, which we know is 1/2, which equals 0.50, or 50 out of 100. So when we order these from smallest to largest, I like to think of negative numbers as money. And when they're decimals, it's like owing cents. So if I have a negative 65 and a negative 38 right here, this is what I'm looking at, these two numbers, that's negative 65 cents and negative 38 cents. So the lowest number is the negative 65. You would owe more money, so it is worth less. So I'm going to start with 0.65, negative 0.65, and then negative 3/8. Then I'm going to look back. So I got rid of this one, and I got rid of this one. So now I have 5/16 and 2/4. And remember, this 5/16 was a positive 312 thousandths, or we rounded it to about a 0.31. And then we have a 0.50. 0.31 is less. Oops, I need to write it as a fraction. So then we have a positive 5/16, and then we have a positive 2/4. So these problems are a little longer. They are pretty confusing. However, you guys can all do this. It's not too difficult. And finally, let's look at number 21. Explain how to compare 0.7 and 5/8. So what you would do is you need to turn them either both into decimals or fractions. So turn them into, we'll just do decimals. Decimals to compare place value. So how I'm going to do that is 0.7 is already done. And you can add a million zeros behind it if you want. It's still 0.7 or 70/100. So then we have 5/8, which I'm going to do long division. Does 8 fit into 5? Nope. Does 8 fit into 50? Yes. 8 times 6 is 48. I have a 2. Does 8 fit into 20? Yes, twice. 8 times 2 is 16. And then I have a leftover 4. Does 8 fit into 40? Yes. 5 equal times. So we have no remainders. Bring my decimal point straight up. So 0.625. If we round to our nearest hundredth, which is this 2, that means we have to look at this number right next to it, that 5. And since it's 5 or greater, it rounds it up to 0.63. So now we need to compare that to our 0.7. So I need to add a 0 behind it. And then I look, is 0.70 greater than or less than 0.63? It's greater than, because when you look at place value, the 7 is larger than the 6. So that's how you compare. So then you can put 0.7 is greater than 5/8. And that's how you do today's homework. If you need help with 12, 14, 17, 18, 19, and 20, please tune into the live meet.